Moynihan, principal of Sunday Middle High School. Mrs. Reed is not going to be here tonight because she's at the volleyball game as a supervisor.
Patrick Gordon, principal, Sunapee Central Elementary School.
Amanda Spears, School Board.
Andy Nichols, School Board.
Scott Wixman, School Board. Ed Anderson, School Board.
Russ Holden, Superintendent.
Kelly Russell's Business Administrator.
If we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Guess we can move right into approval of the school board meeting minutes. If I could get somebody to make a motion to approve the school board meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the September 6th school board meeting.
A second.
Does anybody have any changes or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do I have to abstain since I wasn't here?
No, I think that one will do it.
Okay, well, good to me.
Okay.
I'll go along with it.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the September 20th, 23 CIP meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the CIP meeting minutes.
Second.
Concerns or changes?
No?
Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And finally, the minutes of September 28th, 2023, the policy committee meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve policy meeting.
I'll second Amanda's motion.
Any concerns or changes?
Nope.
Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Russ, if we can move on to the agenda review.
Nothing to add and no changes at this time.
And public forum in accordance with policy BEDH. Would anybody like to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on. School updates, SCES.
So at this point, we are off and having a really great start to the year. Just very different energy to last year where we couldn't start, we had our false start, as I like to call it. So for the year, some things we've been working on already. Creating school-wide expectations that all the students know and understand. We have a mnemonic for it. It's the SOAR expectations. Stay safe, own your actions, act responsibly, and respect everyone. So we're working through how to use that to teach those expectations in every environment, classroom, recess, and hold the kids accountable to those. We're coming up with ways that we can acknowledge and celebrate students for meeting those expectations, both like school-wide, small groups, and down to individuals. And I actually met with Sunapee Outfitters, and they're going to design some T-shirts for our staff to wear and kind of just create that community sense. That was a really great experience just to sit with one of the students and talk through a couple designs they made some changes. It was great. So kudos to Jen Coulier for that really great thing that's happening there. The state of New Hampshire enacted a dyslexia law, and so with that we're required to screen all K-3 students. We worked through the month of September in a hastily form to identify what our screener could be because we didn't have anything that met the criteria of the law. We identified a product out of Renaissance. It's called Star Reading and Star CBM. We're working right now to get some training for a small group of us that we can go in, administer it, do the follow-up assessment, and then deliver what's titled in the law but not truly explained, age-appropriate evidence-based interventions. Looking for some guidance on that. Our K-1 team is engaging in evidence-based professional development on structured literacy. They had their first day-long training this last Friday, and there's 4 more. That I see kind of going hand in hand with the dyslexia law as we become more informed with the impacts of reading disabilities on students. How are we addressing our Tier 1 instruction so that all students can access the learning? I've met with 3 vendors who design, sell, and construct playgrounds. We received our first proposal last week. It looks like my email, I have a second one that I haven't had a chance to open yet. So, they've been really great. They've contacted us a few times, asked questions about it. Just because they submit a proposal to us doesn't mean that we have to, we're married to that. They were telling me that one of the jobs they did recently had 16 proposals before they were set up. And that was through various forms of parent groups, teacher groups, school board if they wanted input, through of course Primex with their input on our insurance. In the near future, fourth grade's really excited to go off to the Polar Caves. It's been an annual tradition for them for like a decade. They're going on October 13th. And a team of teachers is going to be going to a training together that really focuses on school-wide framework for addressing students' academic, social, emotional, and behavioral needs, and how we divvy up those supports to better support our students in need.
Any of the board have any questions? So with the new law, can you explain to me how you choose the group of people that you're going to train? Is this something that you're assigning, or is this something that you will put out information to see if anybody's interested? Is there qualifications?
So because these are not diagnostic in nature, meaning you would need specialized training as a special educator or school psychologist to deliver them, any one of our staff could be trained. Being that the law didn't come with guidance until the middle of August and wasn't enacted until September 27th, what we've decided to do is a group of us are going to get the training this year. It's not going to be any of the classroom teachers. Doesn't mean they can't access the data. The data is really easy to read. We're going to go in and administer the whole group screener and then do the follow-up. And then next year we'll do some training on it, just to not overwhelm the system. We want our teachers to continue focusing on teaching and the learning for the students, while we also meet this law and inform instruction. And then next year we'll take care of building up the system.
Being a member of the budget committee here, I just find it interesting how the state, the way the system works, that they can just enact laws to then apply to the district that doesn't understand the ramifications, one, for the amount of people you need for these changing laws, two, for the amount of hours it takes to change these laws and implicate and put people into these positions. And I surely don't want to add more work to your already workload, but for the time that I've spent on the budget committee and watching just how much the teachers do at the elementary school, you know, with different tasks that they're asked to do outside of that, if you had a possibility to just keep a track of hours or how many people you're sending the training, I really think for the school that type of, for the elementary school or even the high school, those type of things is really beneficial to us to understand when you come to budget meetings and saying that there's difficulties, because this law is thrown in your lap. You don't have to address it. You've got people put in there. You have to take time out to take these trainings. I, on the school board, would be interested in how that affects, just one law, how that affects the teachers and what their job load is.
So I was going to address some of that during my report, since you brought it up, and thank you for segueing into it, and I'll let Patrick jump in as well. But we call this an unfunded mandate, and our legislator is great at passing down unfunded mandates. And so this bill, this law now, has cost the district $1,600 for the program, and then the time and energy that we will need to take to get people trained, and then so those people are now taking services away from other kids, and then from that training, then to evaluate 90, 60, 110 plus kids, needs to be done, and then analyze that data, and then again rescreen potentially from that. So we certainly are looking at tracking that. The program that we got this year for 16 jumps exponentially to 3,000 next year. And so we're a small district. 3,000 doesn't seem like a lot of money, but you're absolutely right. In a budget of our size, we're looking for, you know, where we can potentially cut things without affecting programs. These unfunded mandates are destroying schools. So if you were in, I don't know how the city of Manchester does this. I don't know how Nashville does this. Cursive handwriting, very similar. So we know
we typically do some cursive handwriting for schools that weren't. They have programs that will teach cursive handwriting, but you have to go buy that program. And these are all unfunded mandates that our legislator is so wisely putting in place, and no one is arguing that we shouldn't be screening kids for dyslexia. That's not the argument. But if you're gonna have us do these things, then please put some funding mechanisms behind them, because they do put a burden on our students. So we'll absolutely be bringing some of that.
That's a crucial point, is if you're,
The state should, when they're enacting these laws, find out that information and put money back to the schools to help with that.
The
So,
anecdotal cost as it is over the month of September, between myself, our literacy interventionist, our literacy coach, and our school psychologist, we probably spent about 20 to 30 hours total looking at what was available. We actually were one of the few districts who reached out to the state and asked to speak to the literacy initiative person, and we had an hour-long Zoom because the guidance was rather lackluster. And so that led us to having really, really important questions. Other schools had something in place that for now they feel comfortable saying it meets most of the requirements of the law, because we didn't have anything that met most. What we said is we're gonna go get the one that meets all 10 components. So the state suggested 3 of them. We looked at all 3 of them. We met with the vendors. Those are the hours that are actually probably more frustrating than the assessing, the training to be able to do the assessment. The training's about an hour. So give or take, we'll be okay on that one. But the process by which we were given this guidance was August 15th, I believe Ross emailed us out from the state. They had issued it August 2nd, and we didn't receive it until, at the school district level, until 2 weeks later. So that slowed us down, being able to get going. And then, so what was my goal at that point? Getting our teachers in the building, school going, and all of that stuff. Making sure that the beginning of school year was off without a hitch. So it took a back burner. And then once we got going, we came together and we got going on this. So those are things that I don't know that we'll have to be able to quantify about, like, the real experience of these unfunded mandates, or just the unplanned parts of it.
thank you. Moving on to SMHS.
A couple things going on. We recently had auditions for A Midsummer Night's Dream, which will be done in present time. Ms. Christensen is back in her role as a play director, so she's taken a little bit of a break. And now she's, Renee Brandon can come in and work on it for a few years, and now Amanda's back at it, so we're excited. So we're gonna do a fall play, she'll do a spring play. Ms. Christensen and I have worked on, we're gonna try to get the Broadway trip going again this year, so we've done that a few years ago, just before COVID. We were hoping to do it last year, but a few things kind of got in the way. But we've got a lot of kids excited for potentially doing the Broadway trip sometime this spring. Sports are mid-swing. We're not as dominating as we have been in the past years, but we're holding our own, so they're doing okay. Or probably a little better than okay. And then, but we've been spoiled. I was telling people that we've been spoiled for a number of years. And then we've got our juniors and some sophomores will be taking their PSATs coming up pretty soon. That'll be October 7th. We're still navigating Alma, our new information system, but I think we're getting there.
Questions from the board?
Was that something that's been viewed as an improvement upon what we had in general, or?
No, I don't think it's necessarily an improvement on what we have. But it's still, it's still a communication device. I'm hoping we can, get better at it. We're new at it, so we'll see what things are better than they were with Power School. I think a lot of things, I'm guilty of it. I like what I had, and I think some other people are that way as well. But people have been really receptive when there's an issue. They're reaching out. We're trying to fix those, and I'm confident that over the course of the year, we'll start to learn more of the things. I'm not using a very good word there, but the things that will be beneficial to students and parents that maybe Power School didn't. So I think right now we're just trying to communicate in as an effective manner as we did in the past. And I hope as we get to the latter part of the year, we're doing a better job of some of the new things to happen.
Well, it seems like it's maybe potentially more user-friendly, just working out the bugs and the quirks is gonna be apply for the course for anything like that.
Yeah, there's some things that it doesn't have that we liked, but I think those are the things that you find first, right? The things that we used to use that we liked, and those aren't there. And then I think once we get kind of acclimated to that, then we start to see the things that we didn't have before, that, hey, we can use this.
Sean, you talked about last time, will we have a student rep?
We will, yeah, I've actually met with the student council. I think one of the things that has helped on it is we always done our student council elections in the fall, and I think the solution is to do it in the spring. So I met with them last week. I was actually out yesterday when I met again, and they wanted me to bring some kind of different proposals to them and see which ones they liked out of that. So we will have some of that next week.
Moving on to superintendent.
So as Sean said, this, we had an almost since we were just there. I'm super impressed with where our faculty is in picking up a student management system that's new. It was introduced in June, had some summer to work on it. Most people typically don't work on it in the summertime. But picking that up and implementing in August. Again, we've been working on the back end for over a year now, but it's different, right? So when they change your Google or they change what your email looks like, we all get a little freaked out. It takes a little while to figure it out, but I'm super impressed with where we are. I think it is a very user-friendly product, as Scott said, and it is going to make some of our back-end reporting a whole lot easier, which we're already starting to see right now. So we'll get better at the front end, and the back end is going to be certainly a big improvement. So I commend our teachers for where they are in learning a student management system in September. So we've been working on budget. A couple of things. We have our first budget meeting in November. We'll approve a calendar tonight. A couple of things that we do know going into the budget right now, that our GMR for health insurance, the growth maximum rate is predicted about 10%, which is about a $200,000 increase to our current insurance. So we'll take a look at that as we get a little closer, and we look at people that are actually in that and are taking the buyout. We also will have a small, or I shouldn't say a small, we'll also have an increase in some special education costs. One of the things that we've had in place for a while is our capital reserve account for special ed for unanticipated costs that potentially come when students need to be in placement or be put to another school from our school. We have had an increase in that line. This budget will show an increase in that line. Again, students that come to our school, or students enrolled in our school, are our students, and we have the responsibility of educating those students. So you may see some of that reflected on the budget. But budgets are in. Kelly just said, Kelly has to finish her budget. She told me she's the only one left, and we should be able to start to work on that and get you some numbers for our meeting in November. And so this part of the budget process for us is where we do our work. And so Kelly and I will take a look at it. We'll pull together the administrative team. I've had individual conversations with several administrators already regarding the budget. We then start looking at personnel. We look at where that percentage is, and then we try to work on presenting a budget that we think is palatable, but also allows us to meet the needs of our students. And that's our number one priority, is trying to meet the needs of our students. So in the budget season, we talked about the dyslexia screening. So I've been kind of my soapbox the last couple of years regarding Concord in legislation, legislators, excuse me. Right now, an LSR is a legislative service request. So before it becomes a bill or a law, it's a request, and any one of our 400 plus can submit an LSR. And the LSR can be as simple as school library books. Right now, there are 821 LSRs. Not all to do with education, but probably 400 of those might have to do with education. And then it's up to our legislators now to put some more verbiage behind those and develop into bills that potentially go in front of each House and the Senate, and then become potentially laws like our dyslexia bill. And so we keep a close eye on that. And again, I just remind you, and I will send you updates throughout the year. But if you want to stop something like from happening that just happened, that's where the involvement has to take place. We can't wait to, it's August 31st and the dyslexia bill's on our table, and by the way, we have to go and make our voices heard prior to that. And I've done that. My association I work with does that. I do that with Linda and Hope I reach out to them constantly, we have meetings when need be, I feel great about communicating with them, they both have been very favorable in supporting public education. But just understand that as it sits right now, I believe it's 299 to 298 Senate Republican Democrat down in Concord right now. And I believe there's 2 independents and there might be 1 seat open. So there's not a lot of money that's going to be put out this year because the budget's passed at the beginning, but a lot of verbiage, so a lot of different policy changes. So I'll keep you abreast, but it is legislative season as well, and there are 800 and something potential potential RSAs coming our way. I'll let Andy talk a little more, but we are done with our project, final walkthrough next week, and we are working on firing up the biomass plant. And so I pushed really hard today to get the plant fired up. I've been pushing for a couple of weeks. The concern is that when they fire that thing up, it's too hot, and we're going to burn people out of that building because it just, to be able to turn that down to a degree that it's not pumping that much heat. Again, that's why we have the propane boilers, because that's much more regulatory. They're like, I don't think you want us turning that thing on in 80-degree weather. And I'm certainly today would not have been a good day to fire up the biomass. But we are, that silo is full. We are ready to go, and hopefully scheduled next week to have them come fire that thing up. Just so people know, if they get a chance to hear this, we will be taking some trees down this weekend. Monday, Old Columbus Day, there's some trees in the front of the elementary school that have to go, and some trees over by the elementary school playground that are dead and rotting. We've had them looked at by an arborist, and they have deemed them unsafe to be there and should be taken down for the safety of our kids and of our facilities. And so that will happen, I believe, on Monday of next week. When our kids are in schools. That's it, unless people have questions.
Does anybody have anything for school board topics? No? No? Moving on to policy, first reading. Would you like to go over that?
I guess first I need to make a motion to accept the first reading of the policies, and I would just say as they're listed on the agenda and leave it at that. I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
And as usual, most of these policies are due to legislative changes. I think the first one is a brand new policy, the ACN. And since it's a new school year, just to kind of refresh on what we do with this, every spring and every fall, we usually get the New Hampshire School Board Association provides us with suggested changes, which again are usually based on legislation. And Mr. Holden then takes those and vets them with his department heads and the building principals, and every once in a while I think you pull the lawyer in when it's necessary. And then we have a policy meeting. We met last week. Amanda and myself met with Mr. Holden along with Amanda Hulock was involved in that as well. So, we took the time to go through all of these. The one I did want to just ask about real quick as I was looking at the list, the FA facilities development goals and preparation of capital improvement plan, given our kind of rolling ongoing hit list for CIP that, we still have a lot of little things to attack. And I think that policy is going to compel us, I believe, to submit our CIP plans to the Department of Education, which I think in theory is going to allow the state to allocate funding better. I don't know if that will benefit us at some point.
So again, looking at building aid, as folks know, we applied for building aid a few years ago, received that. Unfortunately, we received that money and didn't pass a warrant to be able to utilize that money. But these facility plans, the DOE is supposed to be creating a plan to collect them, and there could be some new legislation, positive legislation, that would actually start allowing the state to allocate pockets of money towards each district. So for instance, let's say somebody based upon whatever formula was able to receive $100,000 a year. And at which point in time they decided to do a building project or a renovation, could tap into that $100,000, that was their money, whatever they still had in that war chest. It's a good start, I can say that. $100,000 is a lot of money, and there probably won't be that much money set aside given all the schools that are in the state. again, it's a good start, but it could take 30 years to build a war chest that really allows the district to do something viable with that money that they're setting aside. Building aid wouldn't go away, but again, that hasn't been funded fully in 13 years now. So they're trying to find other ways to filter some monies into school facilities, knowing that there are a lot of facilities, including one of our own, that have been over 100 years old and haven't been done. So that's an epidemic, if you will, that's happening around our state with facilities. I'm trying to find some solutions.
Well, good, something positive going on in Concord, baby steps.
We can only hope.
So, I think that's it. I mean, this is the first reading. We have a second reading / approval next meeting, so, you know, if y'all wanna, you know, take a look at this, they are attached to the agenda. That's posted on the website, so, don't hesitate to, you know, shoot an email if you have questions on any of them.
Is there any way that we could get, like some highlighted changes from the previous policy?
I think they're in italics. aren't
So they're in italics in there.
They are,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so everything that's in italics is,
Yeah, and if so there were a couple that are just brand new, like the ACN, Nursing Mothers. that couple
yeah, I was
that-
just
that
looking
were-
at a couple, didn't seem to have anything, so.
Yeah.
They're all, those are the brand new ones.
Brand new ones full, like with strength inclusion, nursing mothers, and that was it, in the facility. I think was-
Those are brand new,
Yeah.
okay.
All those in favor of the first reading?
Aye.
We will move on to action items, the approval of the extracurricular positions. Do I hear
I'll make a motion to approve the extracurricular positions.
I'll second.
any concerns or changes? All
Already
the,
pretty full, did you, looks like you have everything covered.
Yeah, we're not full for,
Winter sports.
winter sports,
Oh.
we've got some work to do.
What are you missing?
We're missing right now varsity girls basketball, JV girls basketball, JV boys basketball. Scott McNamee, we've been able to successfully twist his arm into both middle school teams for the last year. We're planning on being able to do that again this year. We weren't able to twist it hard enough to get him to do the varsity girls position. So I'm twisting Tom's arm. Tom's trying to twist mine. We advertise it out, see what happens.
Gotcha.
And I think we're good on ski. I think this Mr. Rackping is gonna come back and go out on ski, and then Mr. Dalton will do the school ski, so I think we're okay on that. So we're better off in a lot of places, but we've got some winter stuff to take care of.
But it's great to see all these non-sport things too.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely,
awesome.
yeah.
It's great to see.
Alpine coach, is that covered?
Yeah, that's,
That's in there.
so the co-curriculars have worked out well. We've had a lot of people stepping up.
Yeah, that's great.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. And looking for a motion to approve the proposed 23-24 budget calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget calendar. Looks like we're gonna do a couple of them right before a school board meeting like we usually do, right? Anyways, I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second that.
I've looked through it, and some of these concerns, issues with dates, and else.
Where's the location piece? Just out of ignorance.
Typically we've done them in our library.
In
here.
library.
And again, we can add work sessions as we need to.
And we're, I guess, putting the ABC together at this point.
So we've reached out to the, two members who participated last year and both have accepted and would be, welcome the opportunity to work with us again.
Next. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? information items, the SCES project update.
So, we met, what was it, 2 weeks ago now, bro?
Which one?
Yeah, on, we met over at school and everything's 100% done. Like Russ said, we have a final walkthrough, next week, next Wednesday. And hopefully, it looks like we might have some cool weather next week, so maybe they can fire that boiler up before we do our final walkthrough, which would be great. We also talked about, the grant that we received for the high school heating system, and talked, Mike's going to update from EEI, is going to update his numbers because he's using, last year's numbers. So hopefully, at the next school board meeting, we'll have a little more information on actuals instead of, an estimate. But I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Russ, but wasn't it 400,000 that we got this time?
Received 400,000.
Yeah, so it's a big chunk of money. So I think right now the committee's really interested in just, upgrading the boiler system here, not trying to go too crazy, but because our boilers are old and outdated and they were actually used when they got put in this building. And they have to update their pricing a little bit because it's really hard to get the old boilers out of where they're at. And then also talked about scheduling Russ, do you have any updates on the windows?
We are tentatively scheduled for one of the next 2 weeks. So
Okay, so it's still the same.
Windows,
Yeah.
still windows.
Yeah,
Still
so,
window on the windows.
and you worked with all the teachers to come up with a schedule so that it wouldn't affect school because it's gonna have to be done during school for those lower level window replacements. So that should be, a great thing to see, coming up. Besides that, I'll probably have more after the final walkthrough.
All right, October 1st, 2023 enrollment. Which we have in our packet.
Just briefly, we report to the state every year on October 1st, our enrollment that helps set our EDM average daily membership, which if we received advocacy, would have an indication on what we received for advocacy from the state. But just on a positive note, we're up 12 students right now. We had a big ninth grade class. But with this really, to me, I go back and I remember 4 or 5 years ago when we had these conversations about enrollment, and we talked about NESDEC, and we talked about NESDEC staying consistent, showing us right in that 400, 420 mark, and consistently we showed in that 400, 420 mark. So just happy to see that our enrollment has sort of maintained what we thought it was going to maintain, and we continue to attract some students to our district from other school districts that don't have a high school or 6th grade, and that's gone well and has been helpful for us. But our current enrollment this year is 412.
Which is very interesting. One of the big things for my 7th year here that all I've ever heard from the select group of people is that our enrollment's going to drop, and it's nice to see it's actually going up. So for the 9th grade class, going up 10 students, how do you find that that's affecting the teachers, the schools, and enjoyable? I know as having a 9th grade girl in the school, she loves seeing different faces and more groups and kids and stuff to get in there. And just what's your feel for having a class that way?
Yeah, we've had classes that big. I think that this year it's been nice, so I think we have a good process in place. We actually pulled a student this week, tuition student this week who came in and things hadn't been necessarily working out at the high school they were at. It could happen either way, but I think it has been good, but it's something we need to be aware of as well because it's, we look at something, I just talked about Spirit Week, right? So Spirit Week, we kind of just not throw our hands up, but we're like, oh, I already know what Spirit Week is, like the high school, they've all been here at the middle school. No, they haven't been, so making sure that when, one of those Spirit Days doesn't, like green and white, that one's pretty self-explanatory, right? But when it's not green and white, knowing that we have a few more kids who haven't been here in the past and making those adjustments. But so far, I think the ninth graders have been a nice adjustment. You know, it's been nice to get some new kids in there. We really do like those sizes to be, you know, I think most people here would much rather have classes of 35 to 40 than 25 to 30. You know, it just gives us a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of things that are really beneficial to that. You know, if we were up at, you know, 50 or 55, which we were at like one time for a very short window of time, that causes some different issues if that happens, but that's not where we are. We feel pretty comfortable in talking with some principals in surrounding schools. I think we're gonna have a moderately big influx next year again. But then we're also dependent on the size, you know, so I was talking to some students from Unity who have, I think it's 15 to 20 kids in their 8th grade. Well, they had it last year, we pulled some, we have it next year, we'll pull some, and the year after that, their 8th grade's gonna be like 6 kids. So we're not gonna pull as many kids, you know, and same thing with Leominster. You know, some years they'll have a bigger class, some years they'll have a smaller class. So I think there's gonna be years we might pull 10 or 11 kids, and there might be some years we'll pull 3 or 4. And sometimes the reason we pull 3 or 4 is a bunch of them decided to go to Newport because they wanted to play field hockey and football. Or another year might be 3 or 4 because all the classes were down. So, again, on the whole, I think it's been very positive. And I look forward to, I think, a similar circumstance next year. Which, our 8th grade is very small, so that will be really good. You know, we've always been like that. It's been a class of 18 to 20. So it would be good if we could get that into the mid-20s to the high 20s anyway.
I guess that's primarily about the tuition, which we see like 5th grade and 9th grade usually, those are.
Right, so the schools right now, one comes in at 6th grade, the others come in at 9th grade.
One's 5th grade.
5th grade, I'm sorry.
5th grade, so we do have the Croydon.
Croydon.
And moving on to the outing club trips, 23, 24.
So, outing club, as folks know, actually looking for the exact policy, but we have a policy regarding field trips that, I think it's an I policy, IJOA, which allows me to inform you that we will be running a similar field trip that we run every year, which is outing club. They try to do typically 4, Sean?
They do,
Try to, but weather permitted and staff permitted.
exactly.
They either make that happen or not. And the reason why it was on the agenda, because they were prepared to do a trip, and then all of a sudden they just couldn't do it because of staffing and weather, I believe. So they will be doing their trips. I'll continue to make you aware when those trips go out the door, but we are.
These trips more than any other, like the Gettysburg trip will not,
Yeah.
right, the close-up trip will not. But because this is typically a 1-day, 1-night trip, weather has a lot to do with it. We're not gonna go if it's unsafe. And Mr. Covey, I wanted to go last week, and we had a lot of teachers out on Friday, so, you know, it's more flexible, so we can move. So, you know, it's just not the best model here to just say, here are the 4 dates that we're gonna go. Because there's a good chance at least once, if not twice, we're gonna move by.
And again, why it's on there regarding the policy itself, because it would be an overnight. And so, again, we changed the policy that you don't have to have approval, given some of the, as John decided, the conditions of these, so that it's a long-standing field trip, as long as I'm aware, and make you aware that we're gonna be doing these things. That way you don't have to have approval the day
Just in
before.
case.
Just in case.
Right.
Just makes it a little more easy.
Makes it more flexible.
Yep.
Looking for a motion to approve the AP manifest and payroll manifest as stated.
I'll make a motion to approve the AP manifest and payroll manifest as stated.
I'll second.
Any concerns? All those in favor? Seeing no opposed. And agenda items for next meeting, I don't have.
So we will have our state testing results then. We're still tied up in their embargo, but we are confident we'll have them by then. We'll have our second reading of policies. We may have a student rep.
We will have.
We will have a student rep. We certainly would be in the throes of budget after our first budget meeting that we have prior, so things are gonna get fast and furious.
All right, we have no requests from anyone A3, so looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Thank you, everybody, as always.